It's Thursday, September 18th, 2025. It might be time for ABC to lawyer up. Barack Obama climbs out of his spider hole to do what he does best. And what will the Trump administration do in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk? I asked you next on the AM Update. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Michigan yesterday touring a manufacturing facility, and he gave an interview, and he says he's not changing his mind about who and what radicalized the Charlie Kirk assassin.
You talk to the shooter's mother, you talk to the shooter's father, you talk to the local district attorney, you talk to the FBI director or the deputy director of the FBI. You look at every ounce of evidence that we have, and it is clear. This is a person who grew up in a pretty normal family, actually had a pretty good home life, who was radicalized by the far left, by the social networks of the far left, by the ideas of the far left, and got so far down the path of radicalization that he killed my friend. That is not a both sides problem. My friend is dead because of left-wing political radicalization, and if you want to cut that out, then be honest about it and look yourself in the mirror.
So there is Vice President J.D. Vance not backing down, and neither is President Trump. He posted on Truth Social last night, quote, "I'm pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I'm designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention in this matter." That only happened after the big news came down last night about late night ABC host Jimmy Kimmel, who made these comments earlier this week.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
So there's Jimmy Kimmel on ABC's late night program. The preamble to that just dismissiveness and mocking of a martyr and an assassination, the preamble to that was completely built on a lie. That the shooter himself was MAGA, when everything we knew going into the weekend was the opposite. We already knew going into the weekend that the shooter had etched on bullets different Antifa and left-wing propaganda. Well, last night, ABC made the announcement they are suspending indefinitely the Jimmy Kimmel Show, or Jimmy Kimmel Live, whatever the heck that's called. And it's probably the fig leaf that the network needed because his ratings are so terrible and they're not actually making any money on the show. But I do think it marks a marked shift against just this heinous type of rhetoric being carried over airwaves that ABC News enjoys, ABC the network, I should say, enjoys. They just enjoy on the taxpayer dime. This came after pressure from FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, who made this appearance and these comments on the Benny Johnson show yesterday.
When you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are avenues here for the FCC, so there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful, because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he had a tweet out last week where he was saying that, emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And I've been very clear from the moment that I have become chairman of the FCC. I want to reinvigorate the public interest. And what people don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
FCC Chairman Brendan Carr on the Benny Johnson show. It appears that ABC decided to do this the easy way. President Trump was in the United Kingdom yesterday and had a dinner with King Charles where he provided this toast.
On behalf of all Americans, I offer a toast to one of the great friendships, to two great countries, and to His Majesty, King Charles III, a very, very special man and also a very, very special queen. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
President Trump went on to say that the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom is like two notes forming a beautiful chord. Of course, that chord is sounding more and more Bedouin as the face of the United Kingdom changes. Quickly this before the break, former President Barack Obama climbed out from his really dark, really stinky spider hole to do what he does best, gaslight.
When I was president, in the aftermath of tragedies, when Dylan Roof went into a black church and, based on his own words, shot a group of folks who were engaged in Bible study and who had invited him in. And according to him, it was for racist reasons.
So there's Barack Obama coming out of his spider hole to do what he knows how to do best. That would be race bait and gaslight. Gaslighting first. When I was president, I never politicized tragedies. No, that's the only thing you did. That's the only thing you did. And of course, the white on black crime, and it was an egregiously white on black crime, the Dylan Roof church shooting in South Carolina. But that's the only example that comes top of mind. Race baiting, gaslighting, Barack Obama is thy name. When we come back, Air Force One had to tell Spirit Airlines to get off there. You won't believe this. And also, it was long expected, the Fed is finally cutting interest rates. That's coming up next.
New York, Air Force 1, 300, climbing 320.
Air Force 1, New York Center, roger.
Air Force 1, contact Boston Center, 124.52. 124.52, Air Force 1, good day.
Spirit 1300, descend to flight level 330.
Descent 330, clear wing 1300.
Spirit 1300, turn 20 degrees right, vector traffic and descent. Pay attention, Spirit 1300, turn 20 degrees right. Spirit 1300, turn 20 degrees right now. Spirit wings 1300, turn 20 degrees right immediately.
20 degrees right, Spirit wings 1300.
Pay attention, Delta 2951, Boston Center 134.0. Spirit 1300, traffic's off your left wing by 8 miles, 747. I'm sure you can see who it is. It's flight level 320, maintain 330. I'll keep an eye out for him. He's white and blue. Spirit 1300, Boston Center 134.0. I got to talk to you twice every time. Spirit 1300, Boston 134.0. Pay attention. Get off the iPad.
There is a Spirit Airlines pilot getting scolded by air traffic control on Tuesday after not immediately responding to a controller's instructions as Air Force One flew about 8 miles away. The two aircraft were flying parallel over Long Island. Air Force One was flying President Trump to the United Kingdom, and the Spirit Flight 1300 was flying passengers from Fort Lauderdale to Boston Logan International Airport. I mean, that is some crazy audio and right on brand for Spirit Airlines. Air traffic control having to say, get off your iPad. I'm having to tell you everything twice. Pay attention. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Also unbelievable that this would happen in the United States, and paging Harmeet Dillon, you'll understand why in just a little bit. A resident of Dearborn, Michigan, of course, the country's first Arab-majority city, was told that he was not welcome in the community after he expressed concerns that officials named 2 intersections after terrorist sympathizers. During a September 9th city council meeting, Ted Barham, a publicly active Christian resident, told members he disapproved of a sign placed on Warren Avenue named after Osama Siblani, the publisher of Arab American News and a known terrorist sympathizer. Cameras caught the exchange as it went down.
Hezbollah, bombed the embassy in Beirut, and including many Americans. So I just feel it's quite inappropriate.
You are an Islamophobe, and although you live here, I want you to know, as mayor, you are not welcome here.
That is the voice of Dearborn Mayor Abdullah Hammoud.
And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city, because you are not somebody who believes in coexistence.
Paging Harmeet Dillon. Paging Harmeet Dillon. We've got a nice civil rights lawsuit on Isle Dearborn. Of course, Harmeet Dillon, Assistant U.S. Attorney for Civil Rights. I mean, you, as a mayor of a community, you're entitled to your own opinions, but telling a citizen that they're not welcome here seems like that might be a violation of some codicil of the Civil Rights Act. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday announced the first interest rate cut of the year, as policymakers lowered its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points as signs of a weakening labor force outweighed still elevated inflation. Following the central bank's decision to cut rates for the first time since December of 2024, the federal funds rate will now sit at a new range of 4 to 4.25%. The cut comes after the Fed left rates unchanged at its first 5 meetings of the year amid economic, in their words, uncertainty. That's been their fig leaf this entire time. Policymakers have been monitoring economic data, which has shown a slowdown in hiring as businesses grapple with shifts in trade and immigration policy. Rightfully so. That's to be expected. And now I think this completely confirms what I told you at the time, is that the firing of the chief for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that wasn't really about numbers that were not good enough for President Trump. It was about cooked numbers that indicated a stronger economy, or at least a stronger workforce than we actually had. That's what it was all about. Because the fig leaf that the Fed was using this entire time is that, hey, our jobs numbers are good, so we don't need to cut interest rates. And of course, President Trump has been wanting interest rates to be cut for a long time. That was really the impetus for the firing of that Bureau of Labor Statistics chief. And after Trump fired him or her, I think it was a her, we got a really bad jobs report, and bada bing, bada boom, there's a cut in the interest rates. Well, now ex-CDC Director Susan Menares testified in front of a Senate panel yesterday and was grilled by Senator Rand Paul about the COVID jab. Maybe this will elucidate why exactly she was shown the door.
Does the COVID vaccine prevent transmission?
The COVID vaccine can reduce viral load in individuals who are...
Does it prevent transmission?
When you have reduced viral load, you will have reduced transmission.
But in other words, it doesn't prevent transmission. You can still transmit the virus if you've had the vaccine. In fact, there's been reduced ability to interfere with transmission over time. And what we've found is the most recent one since Omicron is down around 16% reduction, if there is a reduction. Does the COVID vaccine reduce hospitalization for children under 18?
It can.
It doesn't. The statistics are inconclusive, and the reason you can't prove that it does is there's so few people under 18 that go to the hospital. The numbers are extraordinarily small. There's like 76 million kids under 18 in our country. 183 died, and a few thousand went to the hospital in 2020 and 2021. And since then, the numbers have dropped precipitously, and the idea and the issue needs to be discussed. But the COVID vaccine is not reducing hospitalization. It's not statistically significant. Does the COVID vaccine reduce the rate of death for children under 18?
It can.
Once again, it can. That's a ridiculous answer. No, it doesn't, and there is no statistical evidence that it does reduce the death rate. These are statistics. We've looked at it. When they approved it, they had this discussion at the vaccine committee that we've been talking about. During the discussion, they acknowledged that there was no proof of reduction in hospitalization or in death. So what they did is they said, what can we use to try to make people take this vaccine? They came up with this. They said that if we give you a COVID vaccine, you make antibodies. So really the whole recommendation for having a COVID vaccine from 6 months up is not based on hospitalization data, not based on deaths. It's based on whether you make antibodies or not. And what people fail to see from this is I can inject you with a foreign protein every week and measure your antibodies. You'll make antibodies every time. It just means immunology work has nothing to do with whether you should get a vaccine every week.
So that clip, courtesy of Children's Health Defense, that is the 95% Rand Paul that everybody knows and loves, grilling now ex-CDC Director Susan Menarez. And now you understand, now you know why RFK Jr. fired her. What a freaking hack Susan Menarez is. Why she was ever tapped to begin with, that's a question maybe for another day. And finally, here's this. It's our poll of the week. I asked you, will the Trump administration successfully tear apart radical left-wing influence networks and enact serious reforms to academia in the next 3 years? I gave you 3 real options. Yes, absolutely, that will happen. No, it's too deep a hole. And 3, there is a real chance, or other. Comment below. We'll get to those comments in just a little bit. In last place is yes, absolutely. 3.4% of you say that the Trump administration absolutely will tear apart radical left-wing influence networks and enact serious reforms to academia in the next 3 years. These are the 2 things that are needed. That's the next step to hopefully prevent, at least from the civic level, the events that we've seen over the last week. In second place, 31% say there's a real chance that this happens, that the Trump administration is successful. And overwhelmingly, number 1, 59% say no, too big of a hole. Let's get to what you had to say. Right-wing dad says no. They'll go about it in a way that will be met with the courts, or it'll fall in priority. Even now, he says he thought about labeling Antifa as a terrorist organization when it should have been an executive order Thursday morning. Tend to agree with you. Yep. I mean, how long does it take to just... that's making an executive order. That would have been a virtue signal, Thursday, Friday, let's say Friday or Saturday morning, okay, when we actually had a suspect named. Okay, can we just go to that? Even if it's a virtue signal, that would have been better than whatever the heck we got from Pam Bondi this week, saying, yeah, we're going to go after hate speech. Hate speech is how the concept of hate speech, which isn't a real thing, just like a transgender woman is not a real thing, or a gay marriage is not a real thing. It's just a made-up term by the left. I mean, that was just ridiculous. Justin says, depends. How quickly does Pam get replaced? Yep. I have no confidence in her right now. Doug says, I have voted for no. I don't think they'll finish the job and that the 28 Vance administration will have to finish it off. I do think they will make progress, though. So a little bit more optimistic than a flat no then, Doug. Jim says, sorry, I butchered your name. I want to say there's a real chance, but I just don't think he'll be able to move fast enough in the time that he has. It's a gargantuan problem, and it won't be unraveled in 3 years. If Vance succeeds him, maybe by the end of his first or second term. That's where I am. I don't think they're going to be able to do much permanent in this first term, but they can, I think, at least roll it back. These left-wing influence and violent influence networks, and some of these just NGOs that basically serve as the Democrats' illegal get-out-the-vote scheme, ballot harvesting. I do think they can do some things to roll that back enough so that Vance has a fair shot in 2028 and he can maybe start to finish the job. Average Apologetics says, without divine intervention, academia remains lost. That's probably a safe answer. Trevor says, Pam Bondi shows us he's not serious about everything that he does. We'll see. James says, yes, some reforms are possible, but not of the sweeping kind many on the right hope for. The real work has to come from outside of Washington, localism, foundational pushback in states and institutions. That's the only way to make academic institutions answerable. I agree with that. And I think it's a both and. We're looking to the federal government maybe too much, and I think that's maybe your critique there. But yeah, red states have to be as red as ever. That is going to do it for a Thursday. Tomorrow is Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Make your submissions over at Real AM Update on X. Look for the pinned post. That's going to do it for a Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.